Hi, welcome back to GraphX. I'm gonna get this out of the way. I'm using Windows right now. This is dual boot installation. I have Linux and Windows on this PC. I'm in Windows just because I didn't want to restart the PC. I was making some music. It's like I had to I'm sorry. I had to fucking confess that I'm using Windows. But cross compilation. Well, actually, this isn't an example of cross compilation. I was gonna say it exists for GraphX, which it does. But also semi-native compiling on Windows. Semi-native because it uses MSys2 and MinGW, which basically let you run Linux commands and stuff in Windows. It's way more complicated than that, technically. But, I mean, it really is just that simple. Like, when you're not under the hood and you're just using it for a few things, it pretty much is just like using, Linux commands. And that enables me to write this makefile in such a way that all you have to do is install MSys2, which is very easy, and then run one line of code there, and you pretty much are done. I even have in Sublime Text a little command here that lets me just build this in Sublime Text on Windows. It's pretty cool. But that aside, I wanted to I want to make more videos, honestly, YouTube videos and shit. I need to do that more. But I really wanted to talk about something that I did recently, which I'm kind of proud of, even if it's not the best implementation. To make this game engine. Oh, and ignore all of the fucking errors, by the way. This is because I haven't configured ClangD on Windows in, actual months, and it's all fucked up. I'll fix it, maybe, eventually. Can I actually turn ClangD off? Nah, I don't think so. Whatever. I'll fix it at some point, but yeah, just ignore all the red stuff. I program on Linux anyways, so I don't even care about that. Right. The thing that I built, that I am kind of proud of. And the reason I started talking about something else was to explain what I made and why I'm proud of it. When I made GraphX, this game engine, it was to learn C++ and learn how to make a game engine at the same time because I thought it was a good idea. And I decided to, follow a tutorial and a guide. Actually learn. Sounds like, not a big deal, but I do this thing a lot where I don't do that, or I semi-do it. Like, I'll follow a tutorial, but, I'm not following it, I'm just reading it, and I'm like, okay, but I want to make something else. But I need to learn how to do it. But I'm not going to do that by, learning how to make something. I'm going to read how to make something, or read something that teaches me how to make something, but make something else, which is stupid. But, I actually finally just sat down and no, I'm going to step by step go through this, and then eventually I will make my own thing, which is GraphX. There are still some pieces of the tutorial in here somewhere. But over time, this has become, I'd say 90% original code, which I'm really proud of. And that brings me to this. And this. I really wish the errors weren't there. It's annoying. But that's mostly not here. This is not the best. It's a little spaghetti. However, it's my spaghetti. And it's also, I'm kind of proud of it. I did this without a tutorial, a guide, without knowing what I was really doing. At least I had never built anything like this before, because I was like, I'm going to try. I think I have enough intuition now. I've learned enough about C++. I want to try and make something from scratch, but actually with my own intuition, my own thought process, not following a tutorial. A lot of Stack Overflow was used. But really just to hey, what does this do? Or hey, how would you how would you properly erase a variable from a map? Because there's the map, erase function, but I also know, and because I'm using pointers a lot and not smart pointers, because whoops, too late now. There's a proper way of getting rid of removing pointers, and you can't always rely on just dot erase. So things like that. What this is I have made my own custom file format. So the way I used to load levels, quote unquote level, I call them theaters, in GraphX, is with a header file, which is not, like, it works and it is nice because, it's raw C++ code, so, it just works until it doesn't. And the thing that was breaking it, I mean, I knew that I would want to move away from that eventually, but the thing that really broke it was Jolt physics. So I have Jolt physics integrated in the engine. Again, not the greatest, but this engine isn't supposed to be good anyway. It's supposed to be me learning how to make an engine. I'm going to make another one afterwards, and I have an idea for what I want to do. I think I talked about that in an earlier video. But point being, Jolt broke the header files because maybe it wouldn't have broken it entirely, but it broke it enough to the point that I was like, okay, I might as well just start doing this. And what happened was, I wanted to add colliders to things in a theater, like falling cubes or the player. And to do that, I would have to invoke Jolt functions and classes. But I can only do that after initializing Jolt, right? Some specific classes. I can only do that after I initialize Jolt, and I was initializing Jolt, and I believe I still am, in here, in the test game tick function, which I might have to rename because this might just be the permanent game tick function. As you can see right here, this is initializing Jolt. And the main reason is because I tried to do it in a separate file, and things were breaking, and I didn't really know what I was doing, and I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to keep everything in here. But that meant that imagine this was the theater file. This is before the integration, or the initialization. So nothing would work, it would break. But if I put it, like, here instead, then, over here somewhere was where I was loading that theater, like the theater that I made in the header file. Well, I can't do that anymore because it doesn't exist. And, like, I could forward declare it maybe, but, like, and also, a big problem I actually believe is that I couldn't include it because, I'm thinking about it right now, I'm pretty sure that doing that meant that the Jolt objects would try to initialize on compile time. Yeah, I'm fucking... Obviously, and the stuff in the function would only start happening when the function is run, so obviously, okay, yeah. Regardless of whether or not I eventually got to the idea, to the right idea, regardless of how, it was breaking. And I knew that fixing it would be longer and would result in I'm still using a method that I don't want to use. And for, the entire length of this project, I do want to replace it. So, I created my own file format. And I'm pretty fucking happy with it. This is a GraphX theater file. .gt for short, but that's the actual, like, extension. I might actually make it so you can name it, like, a .gt or .graphics theater or .theater. I don't know. But for now, .gt. The naming conventions, you can see there's a 0 here, there's a 1 there. That's actually important. So I wrote even in here a little markdown, little documentation. But basically, this is populating a theater with all of the actors and devices it needs. What are actors and devices? Well, actors are stolen from Doom, and it's just anything that gets rendered, basically, to the screen, and that will be in the game. So, player, materials... No, I'm sorry, not materials. But player, lights, because they affect the rendering. Whether or not, you see the debug cube that says, hey, there's a light here. I have a thing called static body actor. It's just a actor with a static body collider. But yeah, in Doom, actors are the player, I believe also the weapons, the enemies, fucking rockets, anything, right? Like that. Now, Doom has thinkers as well. Thinkers are basically like a way to... Because actors all derive from the base actor class, and it has a bunch of shit in it. What if you want to make like a thing that counts your inventory items and waits until a certain one has gone into your inventory and then does something? You don't need to render that. You don't need to care about positions or rotations. So why make it an actor with all of that code for rendering or positions or rotations and stuff like that? So that's what thinkers are. Thinkers have some stuff that actors don't, and they also have, they don't have a lot of stuff that actors have that they don't need. I don't have that yet. That kind of is what a device is, and I might rename it, but device is a little bit different. Devices currently are just a handful of things, and they're kind of specific. It's materials, meshes, colliders, environments, which do things, but not that much. And then sprites, which are just a mesh subclass, and it's really just a mesh with a specific default like constructor. But you know, it's sanity reasons. And yeah. So devices are pretty much, meshes, materials, and environments, and colliders, and sprites. I think that's it. And they're things that, like, interact with the physics and the world, and like in the case of materials and meshes and sprites, they do like render, but they're not full actors. They're pieces of actors, and I could have just kept them unique structs as they were, but I make them derive from a device because of this, the way I did the file format. So at the let's start with the name of the file. The name of your file. I'm also going to make sure this is recording still. All right. The name of your file should follow this syntax. You have a number, any number. Theoretically, it should work. I believe I've tested it with numbers that are more than a single digit. Pretty sure. I'll find out, eventually. I think I did like specifically test that. Anyway, start with a number, right? Then a period, then the name of your theater, and I think you can use white space, but you really shouldn't. That might mess up the interpreter or the parser, and it's just better idea to not use white space. But the name of your theater, and then .gt. And the number at the beginning is actually the load order, or eventually will be the load order. It is also the unique identifier of the theater, and it does allow for and not only it doesn't allow for loading external theaters. I had to program that in, but the unique identifiers do make it so you can replace theaters and basically replace levels. Like how in Doom, I don't know if you don't know, in Doom, you can make levels, and if you name them a certain name, they will replace the level in the game that has that name. Specifically, if you name the file something. And that's how you can just, make a level that starts when you start the game, without, having to hack the game or mod the game. If you just give it a certain name, it'll load first. Same kind of thing applies here. So these two theaters here, 0.hello world and 1.collision testing, you could just call them, hello world theater and collision testing. These two are embedded in the game engine. So when I compile the game engine, these two, they get put in a, you can see down here, theaters.cpp file. And you can see there is the unique identifier, 1 collision testing, 0 hello world theater. And they're just embedded as strings. And they get parsed and everything, and interpreted and turned into theaters and loaded by the engine. They get directly put into that embedded theaters map. Might change the name though, because embedded theaters is actually a bit of a misnomer, because if you load a theater from if you load an external theater, it actually gets put in that map. And again, if it has the same ID as one of these or any theater that is embedded, it'll replace it. So that's that. Now, it starts off, and it always has to start off with an ampersand, and then the full name of the theater. And it doesn't have to match the file name. Honestly, the file name can be whatever the fuck you want it to be. It has to have the number for the load order. The name can be whatever the hell. This is the actual name that will be, put in the name variable in theater. And then you can go crazy. Populate it with whatever you want. There are a few rules. There are a few, obviously, syntax. And because I didn't really fucking, I just couldn't be fucked to, I didn't make it, parse through it twice to account for, it'll make sense later, but to account for, making things after making other things. It just goes straight down once. And the reason I'm saying that is because I'll explain what these variables settings are, but first we'll talk about this type. Although actually there are two. So using angled brackets, is there? Yes, using angled brackets for a variable. Well, let me explain what this is actually, I'm sorry. So this is a whole class right here. You have the class name, which is rigid body actor, and that is the name of a class in the engine. If I go to actors, let's open the header file. You can see rigid body actor. It is a physics actor, and physics actor is an actor. The rigid body actor, rigid body actor here. You use the class name, and then in parentheses after it, you give it a name. Falling Cube 1. Then you have to put curly brackets because I like C++. And it really does help with the parsing. I did that just because I thought it looked cool, and then it ended up being really useful. And I'm, I already kind of knew why curly brackets are used and stuff like that, but oh my god, it really was helpful. But yeah, the collider. So this is a variable, and this is what we're setting it to. If you put you variables come in three types: square brackets, parentheses, angled brackets. Square brackets are references, but specifically C++ references. In the interpreter file, up here, this map, C++ definitions, these are what you can reference, and you can add to them, add whatever you want. So, for instance, if I set a variable, you can see here moving, object layer is moving. Well, that's because I'm setting the object layer of that collider to layers moving, which is a jolt physics thing. And Doom texture diff is compo4_5_png, which is an embedded texture. And you can see that up here. So that's what the square brackets are. Parentheses are raw data. Raw data is translated as a vector of strings. So you can do up to 3 right now, numbers with commas separating them. And it's up to 3 because I use GLM vec3s and don't really use vec4s. I do use quaternions, but I mean, you're not really going to manually put a quaternion in here probably. And I probably will account for that. I do want to update this to make this account for any number of numbers, but the way I do it is I use template functions. It's a little hard-coded, a little tiny hard-coded. It's a little flimsy, so maybe not. But you can do 1 number, 2 numbers, or 3 numbers right now, and then, in a row for 1 variable, right? Or strings. I don't know. No. I don't think you can do a vector of strings. Yeah, just 1 string. But that's a raw data variable. It is very limited, but it's because, right now raw data is only going to be a number or, a vector 3 because I don't really use anything else. So, or a string, which you see with the names here. That's a string. The angled brackets are where we get into some interesting stuff. I set the collider let's go back to Falling Cube 1. I set the collider for Falling Cube 1 to test collider 1. Well, test collider 1 is the name of this collider here. See what I'm getting at? I set the collider of the rigid body actor to a collider I've already made. But I have to have made that collider first, because remember what I said? I didn't want to fucking tell the interpreter to, or the parser to read through the thing twice to like get all the, you know, variables and classes you make and then go through it and do everything, which means that if I actually put rigid body actor falling cube 1 up here, this wouldn't work because test collider 1 doesn't exist yet. So if you're going to be doing this kind of linking, you have to put whatever you're going to be linking or referencing, you have to make it first. But then you can do that. Now, what is this? This is a sandwich. I like sandwiches. I'm really proud of sandwiches. They're very flimsy. But they theoretically should work for any number of sandwiches of layers. But basically, in the rigid body actor, I set its mesh to be cube. And cube is a mesh I made up here. But I want to change the material of cube. Actually, cube doesn't have a material. It has a default material. I could have set a material in here and then changed it, or, you know, not have set one, which that's what I did, and then change it. But if I want to do that, well, I have to make a new cube mesh, but then give it a different material. But that's annoying. I don't want to have to do that every time I want to use the same mesh with a different material. Now, granted, in the code, that is actually what happens. It makes a new mesh, gives it a different material. But that's automated, and also, that's not really, like, inefficient because of the way that the meshes work. It's fine. And also, this isn't supposed to be an efficient code base anyway. But regardless, for the user, they don't want to have to do that. They just want to be able to say, well, use the same mesh, but give it a different material. So you put a, almost a parentheses, colon. Gee, fuck. You put a colon. And so a sandwich is basically when you set a variable to something, but you also want to change something in that variable when you're setting it. This is equivalent to, I'm going to just type in here as if it's C++. This is equivalent to saying like mesh equals mesh, and then let's say in the constructor you have to give it a name. So name, and then you can give it a mesh, and we'll say new mesh pointer, new mesh, or I'm sorry, material. New material, and then whatever, right? That is basically what this is, but it's shorthand, and it's in my own custom format. So cube, and then I set cube's material, right? I set the cube's material to Doom Shiny, and Doom Shiny is material I've made up here. Beautiful, and it just works. And then, let me see, anything else? They don't have to be floats, the numbers, by the way. Digits can be integers. They all have to be this, or they all will be the same. So if you mix, like for instance down here, if you mix integers and floats, then all of them will be floats, and it'll be fine. It'll automatically like convert which one, and it favors floats, obviously, because you don't want to truncate, you know, two float numbers because one of them accidentally you left as a digit. And then, let's see. Right, and this is really cool. So if you misspell a variable, or you don't set a variable, or you just added a variable to your class, like let's say in the player, because this is what happened. I experienced this, and I'm like, oh wow, I'm glad I programmed this. If you make a new variable called friction, and then you want to set, that's not the player, where's the player? Player's down here. You want to set friction to 1, and I misspelled it. Well, how does the interpreter know that this and this exist in this? It doesn't, and it doesn't need to. I originally made a fucking terrible version of this interpreter because I tried to make sure it knew every variable in every class as a string name, like the name of the variables as a string, and then knew that that was a variable. Terrible idea. Don't do that. That also meant that I had to make a fucking map for every single class with every variable I wanted to change and give it a default value. But that meant that default value was overwriting the default values in the classes in some arbitrary file. So mouse sensitivity was 0.05. No, it's not. Not if in the fucking interpreter file, in the fucking player settings map, I have set mouse sensitivity to be 200. Now it's 200, even though the default value right here is 0.05. So that was a terrible, terrible idea. And I immediately was like, yeah, that's a terrible idea. And I changed it. The interpreter doesn't know what variables and what variable names are in these classes. And it doesn't care. It doesn't give a fuck. Because it doesn't need to. All it does is it reads through the file. And this, oh, also this huge thing, what is it? Yeah, up here. Okay, that's not huge, I guess. This thing is just a debug. It prints like a really pretty, like, this is a theater, and this is all the stuff in it, and these are the settings in the file. This does a bunch of extracting data and stuff. Anyway, all the interpreter cares about is reading this file and putting strings and data into a map, and then sending it on its way to a class. That's all it cares about. Doesn't care about anything else. The job of setting the variables goes to the classes. And this is really fucking nice because it keeps all of that busy work in the class. So you don't have to go back and forth and back and forth. I will show you, there are a few things that you do have to set when you're making a new class, but that's it. Then when you do variables, you don't have to do all that setting things up. So it doesn't make any fucking sense. Let me take you through it. Let's go with the, not the player, because the player doesn't use like a bunch of different data. What about the base actor? Base actor actually, I think, yeah, base actor doesn't as well. Whatever, we'll go with base actor. So I'm giving these like quirky names. The devices actually have like initialize and load settings for their function names. The actors don't because they're quirky. You got a callback. Just means to load the settings. GraphX, G settings, new settings. G settings is just a type name for like fucking, where is it? Yeah, it for an unordered map of a string and an any. Any is kind of the spawn, by the way. Standard any is kind of the spawn of Satan. I really don't recommend using them heavily unless doing something like this. And even then, I definitely didn't write this in the best way possible, but I did it by myself. So, anyway. Oh yeah, if new settings dot contains fuck you, new settings equals settings. This is just, I wanted to be able to give settings, send them specifically to the actor without overriding their settings that they got when they were made. Because I knew that eventually I might have want to do something with that. So you got a callback, GraphX, G settings, new settings, and it defaults to an empty standard any over here and a key of fuck you. And so basically it just says, hey, if it has fuck you in it, I don't think you're going to name your variables fuck you in all caps. So it's the default one. So just set it to settings. That's basically all it's doing. Then we do a few things here, specifically with Eulers, because I'm converting them to quaternions and converting the quaternion to degrees, and then whatever. Don't need to know anything about that right now. But here's where the interesting stuff is. These are template functions, and I believe they are defined. They were defined in the interpreter file. I think I moved it. Yeah, I moved it to another file. I forget what it was. It might be actually, no, it's not in GActors. I think it's in gcommon. Anyway, but they basically just take a variable as a reference, and then they basically check what you do here, new settings, and you can see here I'm using the brackets. So this is a unordered map. When using unordered maps, you can grab data from them in one of two ways. There's multiple ways of doing it, but specifically two ways that I want to talk about is new settings.at and new settings brackets. Now, new settings brackets. Using brackets when getting data from a map is not recommended, at least by me. Probably by many people, because that has actually two functionalities. If, like for instance, if name that doesn't exist in here, then using .at, I think it does actually like return an error. But using the brackets, if it doesn't exist, it just makes that exist and puts it in the map with an empty value. An empty, in this case, standard any, which I account for. This is the reason I actually use this. Because if these template functions receive a value that is an empty standard any object, they don't do anything to the variable that you pass to it by reference. This is really fucking good. Because if I didn't do it like this and I just had this function return the value I want to put in the variable and then name equals that would be a bad thing. Because, well, if this setting wasn't set or doesn't exist or is misspelled, then I'm setting that variable to some random data or nothing. Which brings us back to the problem of my default value is no longer being respected. This makes sure that if you make a typo or that setting doesn't exist or hasn't been set, that your variable will not be overwritten and you shouldn't get a crash. In fact, I don't think you will. But I don't want to say that. Don't hold me to that. But this also means that in the player, or well, this is just the actor, but like in the player, and it already exists, so you know, to pretend it doesn't. But let's say the friction variable, I had just made that. I just invented the friction variable right here. Float friction, and I want to assign, or I want to set that. Well, by the way, if I do this and just leave it like that, and the player doesn't know what to do with it, nothing happens. It doesn't crash because the player just doesn't touch it. But if I want the player to use it, if I wanted to load that setting, well, all I have to do is go to the player where I already am because I just made this new float, new variable, and I use the correct function, set raw data, and then the variable, new settings, then name that I'm going to give it, which that is, unfortunately, it does have to be like the exact same name. Although you could just copy it because it doesn't change the variable if this doesn't exist. You could just copy paste it and then just do, lowercase f, account for that. It's like overloading. Anyway, but yeah, I just do that and now it exists. And now friction 1.0 does something. But if I misspell friction, nothing happens. It doesn't get set, obviously, but it doesn't crash the game. So this is the GraphX Theater file format and the custom interpreter I built for it. And it works like a fucking, well, I don't want to say like a dream. I don't want to say like a charm. It works. And in some ways it is very intuitive and very cool, and in a lot of other ways it is it does load very fast though. That is the thing. Currently, these are very small theaters, but it loads decently fast. Now, this is a theater. This is another theater. Has more stuff in it. I want to show you, demonstrate to you, these files working, the game engine working, and also external theater loading working. In the directory that the executable file is in, or the binary file, which GraphX debug right here, as you can see. Oh, don't open it, that's just a bunch of binary data. It is in the build folder. Well, in that directory, has to be in the same directory, you make a folder, you call it theaters. In theaters, you make a theater file. let's make a theater file. I'm going to copy and paste a bunch of stuff from the other theater files, but I want to start making one to kind of show you the process. Now, I can give it any load order, and it should... I actually don't remember if I programmed this in or not. I don't think I did. So, if you have theater 0, 1, 2, 3, 5, it might crash, or it might never load 5. If I haven't... I think I fixed that and made it, like, go up until it finds it. I think I did. But if I didn't... I will definitely find that out very quickly, because that is something that I want to make sure I do. I'm pretty sure that I fixed that, because I did test it, but I don't remember if I put that off until later or not. Anyway, we'll name it 2 dot, give it a name, external theater, I guess, dot GT. Remember, that's not actually the name of the theater. The name of the theater will be what you need to include at the top of your fucking file. Ampersand, and I'll name it, external, or externally loaded testing theater. Cool. Now, there are a few things, with the way that I programmed the engine currently. There are some debugging, or not debugging, but just like hard-coded stuff that isn't going to stay forever, but is just there to show off things. So, like, for instance, I expect a flashlight to be in the theater at all times. This is a dangerous function. It shouldn't crash the game with its return, but it is basically bypassing functions I put in the theater class to make sure that, like, you only access things when they're available, and you don't break things. It bypasses that and just goes directly to grab it. But it also, like, does a few checks to make sure, and returns. It doesn't return null, so it won't crash. But yeah, like, I expect a flashlight to be there, and then I expect, like, I do things with it and stuff like that. So yeah, some hard-coded things in there. But obviously, like, down the line, I'll remove that, and also it shouldn't crash the game if that doesn't exist. What will crash the game, I believe, is if a player doesn't exist. So add a player. Let's just copy and paste, actually. GraphX player and flashlight. Cool. So the flashlight actually can be above the player. It doesn't matter where the flashlight is. That's set automatically. I might change that, actually. But I mean, like, a flashlight's only ever gonna be on a player. Because if a flashlight's not on a player, then it's just a spotlight, which is what a flashlight is, but with a few extra, like, functions for interacting with as a player. So why would it not be on a player? Anyway. Then let's make some fun things. Let's make a floor and a wall. Now, when you make a physics actor or a rigid body actor, you have to make a collider and give it to that physics actor or rigid body actor. If you don't, they'll use a default one, and it's not going to look right. In fact, they might not even use a default one. I think I did change that to be null pointers. It might crash. I think they give it in the constructor body. I think they do make it a collider, but if they don't, that is definitely a crashing point. Anyway, so I'm gonna have to make like a 1-minute video after this, directly just showing the fucking file loading, because this is a 40-minute video. Right. The reason I brought that up is because static body actors are different. Static body actors, and I will have to change this. I mean, you actually can, I think, give them a collider and specify the shape of the collider, maybe? But they're designed to have a default cube collider that matches the dimensions of the actor, because they are designed, at least right now, to be just big cubes or small cubes or whatever kind of cubes. And shapes, you can make them any shapes you want. The collider will always be, by default, a cube, and it makes its own default collider, whereas rigid body and static or physics actor don't. The reason, and the main, honestly, the reason I made these is so that I could make a wall and a floor without having to fucking make a collider for them every single time that just is the same shape and size and position. So I'm going to copy and paste this here as well. A floor, mesh material. Oh, we need to make a mesh and a material. I will also copy and paste these because I'm lazy. I did say I was going to write this, but quite frankly, I don't really want to actually. All of it at least. You know what? I will add some interesting, unique things, especially so we can, fucking see what we're doing. Oh, I will do this though. I did include, I have a missing texture. I have a texture for lights. I have the doom texture here. No texture, which is just white. I don't. That's redundant, but it's me we're talking about. And then I have this folder here, and eventually these will get turned into, textures, but for now I only have two, orange and light gray. And these are not the source engine textures, but they are designed to look like the source engine dev textures. So let's use those. Let's actually just have Doom dull, and just rename it Doom. Doom. And then let's make a new material. Let's name it source. And let's set the diffuse texture to be, and I think I remember the name, but I need to go back and look at it. Source orange or source light gray? Source light gray. And let's use source light gray because the nice thing about source light gray, I will also set the specular texture to be no texture, and then the specular strength to be 0. Or you know what, actually? What about, we're actually giving this guy a little specular highlight. You can set the color of the material. That's what I was trying to get at. You can set the color. It is a vector 3. And so it has to be 3 numbers. I did not make linting in here. Or, sorry, not linting. Is it whizzing? No, it's not. It's not fuzzing. Ah, that's gonna piss me off. Ah, man. Yeah, no, that's gonna piss me off. I forgot a word. Anyway, let's set the color. Let's make this not gray. Let's actually make this blue. So it is red, green, blue. So we have, let's do 0.1 red just to be cheeky. 0.45 green and 1.0 blue. All right. Source. Let's set the floor to be source. But let's make the wall that's going to be in front of us Doom. In fact, let's not make it a wall. Let's make it a spire, which I did in the collision testing one. Spire 1. It's a big, tall fucking thing. It's really cool. Let's do that. So the scale, I'm actually going to make it 50 in the X, 50 in the Y. No, 200 in the Y. And let's make it uneven. Let's make it 37.5 in the Z. The Z. And then the position. It is OpenGL, so the Z has to be negative to have it be forwards. X0, let's put it like a little off center. Negative 12.4. The Y position is important, I believe, because it's in the center. Like the origin point, so to speak, is in the center. I think that means we want to put it 100 up, so that way it's touching the ground. But it might be 200. It might be two. Oh, right. This because this is the half scale. It's 200 up, 200 down, so it's 400. Right. I want to change that or tweak it so that way, because I always forget about that. Let's set the rotation degrees, I believe is the name of the variable. Oh, right, that's right, it's not defined in here. It's, I believe actor. This is the one annoying part, is if you forget a variable name, you do have to find it around here somewhere. Or you could just redefine it. Actually, you can just name it whatever you want. Rotation, it is just rotation. Euler angles and in degrees. Because, you know, you're not gonna fucking define a quaternion. You also don't have to make these all line up. By the way, I just do that because it looks nice sometimes, and sometimes I just don't give a fuck. Rotation. Let's say... Let's just make it, yeah, let's not make it too funky. Turn it like negative, like 40 degrees. Cool. Let's make another static body actor. I have an idea. The speed of Longinus. Longinus, or whatever the hell, however you pronounce that. Let's make a pole in the air. Mesh. Material. Cube. Doom. No, not doom. Red sauce. What's red sauce? I haven't made that yet. I have an idea. Red sauce. You actually can make the colors greater than 1, but that just makes them like brighter and brighter until they blow out. So just put that out there. 0.21. I don't know. All right, and then with club sauce, scale. Let's say 5.4. 75. 5.4, I want it to be equal. And then position. Yes. Yes. Let's say like negative 8.5. And then I want it up in the air. Let's say like 94, and then my skin is dry. I need to stop fucking chewing at it though. It's gross. What was right. How far back did we push the spire? 51. Oh, I want it kind of in front of it. So let's do negative 47. And then rotation. This is a big thing. I want it like kind of like not standing straight up, but like kind of like. So, ow. Like. So. Nope. Wait a minute. What's the Z? That would be. Right. Okay, so 27. Right. 45. No, not making a perfect middle ground. That was a 47.2. And then I'll give it a negative. We'll say negative 10. I don't think that matters too much. And then lights. We need lights. Right. Light directional. Sun. Actually, I'm just gonna copy the sun from here. Cause where'd that fucking go? I skipped past it, didn't I? Yes, I did. Let's just put that here. You don't need to name it the sun, but I just do. It's white. It's a little teeny strong. Because I don't have shadows in the shader yet, the directional light just kind of makes things look a little weird. And then, you know what? I'm just going to copy and paste these These are just spinning lights in a circle. They're for testing and, I guess, demonstrations. Let's make 4 of them, though. I'll leave those 2 untouched, and then I'll make 2 more. Pivot position, say like negative 10.2, 5.2, negative what? Every time I look up, I see the red sauce variable name, and I keep reading it as Job from Arrested Development. Club sauce. Pivot radius, let's give it a big one. Let's say 5.0. And then pivot speed, let's make this guy spin. Fucking 10.0. That's gonna be way too fucking fast. Let's give it a, this is a blue color. Let's make this like a nice red with like barely anything else. This guy, let's make it green. No, I don't think we have too much green going on. And then let's set this guy kind of in between the two. Let's put it at 0.4 on the X. No, because you do start at 0, so negative 1.4. And then let's give it like, let's make it nice and tall, like 20. And then nice and far back, like negative 20. Why not? Pivot radius, let's give it like a nice big 10. And then speed, I'm gonna give this guy like a 3.2, not too fast. And there we go. Now we have our new theater. This should work, I think, hopefully. So, debug build. This should work. One moment. Yeah, T_settings doesn't exist. I just made that though. I did pull the git. I'm gonna pause the recording real quick. Okay, we're back. A file that I had made, I guess I deleted somehow. It's just gone. I had to put it back. And then I did make sure to check that everything compiled and worked correctly. So yeah, I'm not gonna be surprised. Like, oh, look at this. I have seen it. I have tweaked it a little bit, actually. The floor was extremely shiny and bright because of the specular, so I turned the strength off. And I adjusted the pull because it was just kind of in the spire, and the spire was way too close to the player because I forgot it's the scale was really big, and so it was right up in your face. But that being said, let's look at everything. So we have our theater file in the theaters folder. We have our, also it crashes on the debug build because of the printouts to the fucking terminal. I don't know why. It's Windows. It just can't fucking handle that many printouts. And it's probably because I'm using like /n for a new line and stuff. It's stupid. I've had this problem multiple times. Linux works perfectly fine. Windows crashes like randomly, and actually randomly. Random points in the program. When text gets printed to the screen. So, too much. Stupid. Anyway, that being said, let me show you GraphX. It is the release build, so it does like do a few extra steps. There we go. This is the first theater, Hello World Theater. We have the physics objects here. We have our flashlight. And we have a spinning light. It's kind of like you can't really see what it's doing because it is like the brightness is a little too dim. But you can see what this light is doing. Kind of. Is moving slowly. But if I hit the right arrow key, I go to the next theater. Left arrow key, the last theater. And they do loop. This one shows off the physics engine a little bit better. And we have, look at that, the spire I talked about. I also made this little thing. Use the lights better. And now if I hit the next one, it's not going to loop back to the first theater. It's going to load our external theater. Look at that. Look at that fucking light go. Holy shit. That guy is fucking going. There's the spire. Club sauce. There, or that's the pole. This is the spire. Floor is blue. Disco, because of all the fucking lights. And, yep, we bump into it because it's a rigid body. Look at that. Pretty cool. Look at that. That is fucking massive. The floor is definitely not big enough. And, yeah. The debug keys are still here. So, like, I just turned, that's right, that turns the flashlight red. R resets the physics objects to their default position. You'll notice that more here. If I hit R, it just resets everything, basically. And then G turns the ambient lighting on and off. I think it's broken because of the changes I made to the environment class. I'll fix that. It's not really a big deal, though. I might have just actually disabled that, to be honest. Oh, and then tab should... Yes! This is really cool. I have integrated I'm GUI, and yes, these are all the actors, their names, their UIDs, their type name, which is their class, and the devices. And then look at that, currently loaded theater, externally loaded testing theater, which, if you remember, is what we named it. And you can see that the name of the theater, and look at that, all changes and updates. And yes, that is the Hello World Theater. That's the collision testing theater. And yeah, fully integrated. I wonder, did I keep the changes I made to the player's mass? No, I did not. Okay. I was testing things and I made the player's mass like fucking 200,000 on this map, and I was just kicking these all over the place. But yeah. I am really fucking happy with this. I went from knowing way less than I thought I did about programming to making this. So I'm just really happy. But yeah, it's GraphX. And look at this. This is the really cool thing. Go out of it because I don't want to break anything. But if I, like, oh, the floor is way too small, right? And the colors, it's way too blue. Well, because this is an externally loaded theater, not an embedded one. Where's the floor? Floor, right here. It uses the sauce. Let's make this guy 0.5 on the blue. And let's make this, like, 250. Like, let's just make this floor giant. I haven't closed out of this. I haven't recompiled GraphX. Watch what happens. It should. I haven't tested this. Do nothing. Right, because I don't call it when I switch. Okay, I do have to restart. But I don't have to recompile. Look at this, look at this, look at this. Desktop, GitHub, graphics, build. I don't have to recompile. Yes! It actually works! It has changed. It has changed. Because I don't... The function for loading the external theaters, I only call it once. I do intend to call it every time you click the button, i.e. every time later on you load a level or whatever the hell. Right now it only refreshes once when the main function runs. But that means that I can, like, oh, the floor color, it wasn't bright enough. There we go. Yeah, look at that. Like, oh my god. Yeah, I'm really happy with this. I'm really happy with this. Yeah. You can get a build of this. I don't know if the current build... Let me check. I think the current build does have external graphic theater loading. Let me see. No. Okay. Right. Well, I will actually do that. By the time this is out, I'll probably be asleep. But tomorrow, i.e. today, because it's 1 a.m., I will finish... Yeah, I will finish uh, I will make a release. There will be a fourth alpha out or fifth alpha out, and the fifth alpha will be the one with external theater loading that you can fuck around with. And I think it'll also have the I'm GUI stuff in there too. Honestly, it'll probably just be this build. So yeah. And I will actually do it right now when I stop the video. I will also make it so that way you don't have to close the app and reopen it to have your changes to the external theaters refresh. I'll have it refresh every time you hit the button. Bam! I'm really happy with this. I'm really happy. I think it's cool.